There's a place in Egypt that almost nobody talks about. Not because it's unimportant, but because it's too important. A place where archaeology, politics, geophysics, and history collide so violently that even mentioning it in academic circles can get you blacklisted. It's called Hawara, a quiet patch of desert in the Fayum, a place mainstream Egyptology insists is nothing more than a ruined mud brick pyramid and a pile of limestone chips. But the deeper you look, the more that story falls apart. Because Hawara isn't just another ruin. It's the epicenter of what researchers call an intense epistemological conflict, a polite academic way of saying someone's lying.
You're doing that thing again. You know, the tone you get when you're about to drag me into something ancient and unsettling.
I mean, yeah, but this one is ancient and unsettling.
Fantastic. Lead the way.
So, before we get into the modern drama, we need to go back, like way back, to the people who actually saw this thing with their own eyes. Herodotus, Strabo, Diodorus, Pliny, Pomponius Mela, and even the Roman Emperor Septimus Severus. These were not fringe writers. These were the most respected historians and geographers of their time. And they all described the same thing. A massive, sprawling, impossibly complex structure that made the pyramids look like warm-ups. Herodotus said it had 3,000 rooms, half above ground, half below. Strabo said the roof was made of single monolithic stones, forming a flat stone plane you could walk across. Diodorus talked about 40 columns to a side and intricate memorial paintings. Pliny called it the definitive labyrinth of the ancient world. And none of them described a ruin. They described a masterpiece.
So we're talking about a structure that supposedly existed, supposedly mattered, and then supposedly vanished. Great. That's totally comforting.
It didn't vanish. It was buried, flooded, and politely ignored.
Which is somehow worse.
Agreed.
Fast forward to the 1800s. Enters Sir Flinders Petrie, the godfather of modern Egyptology. Petrie digs at Hawara. He finds a massive, flat layer of compacted stone and sand, a slab so big it could fit the Karnak, Luxor, and the Ramesseum combined. But he doesn't find walls. He doesn't find chambers. He doesn't find the labyrinth described by the ancients. And so he makes a call that will shape the next 130 years of archaeology. It was all quarried away. No evidence, no deep excavations, just a conclusion. And the academic world said, sounds good, case closed.
You're telling me the guy who exaggerated everything suddenly became understated? That's the part that freaks me out.
Well, exactly. When the loud guy whispers, you listen.
Or you run.
True.
For over a century, nobody challenged Petrie until 2008. That's when I graduated. A team from Ghent University and Egypt's own National Research Institute of Astronomy and Geophysics arrives with modern tools. Ground-penetrating radar, electrical resistivity tomography, very low-frequency electromagnetics. The only tech that can see through Hawara's salty groundwater. They scan the site. They process the data. They run 3D inversions. And what they find is not natural. It's not geological. It's not random. They find geometry, rooms, walls, a grid. At 8 to 12 meters deep, the data resolves into perfectly enclosed chambers, exactly where Herodotus said the lower 1,500 rooms were.
Hold on. 12 levels? Underground? And everyone just shrugs?
That's the pattern. The bigger the find, the quieter the reaction.
That's not a pattern. That's a cover-up wearing a trench coat.
Now here's where the story flipped. Strabo said the labyrinth had a monolithic stone roof, and Petrie found a monolithic stone slab. The Mataha team puts two and two together. Petrie wasn't standing on the foundation, he was standing on the roof. The labyrinth wasn't destroyed, it was buried, flooded, and preserved under a stone lid so thick that the Romans couldn't quarry through it. And this is the moment the entire mainstream narrative collapses.
So, the entire thing is underwater because someone rerouted a lake? That feels like the ancient version of sweeping evidence under the rug.
A very large rug with a very suspicious bulge under it.
And everyone's pretending not to trip over it?
Right.
Now, why didn't the Romans dig down? Why didn't later Egyptians repurpose the stone? Because the roof isn't a roof, it's a fortress. A slab so dense and thick, up to 18 meters in places, that it acted like bedrock. The upper levels were stripped, but the lower levels untouched. Still there, still intact, still waiting.
So, Petrie was meticulous. If he walked into something that shook him, that's not cringe, that's data.
Exactly. He wasn't the type to get spooked by shadows.
Which means he saw something real.
Now we enter the controversial zone. In 2015, a private firm called Merlin Burroughs uses military-grade synthetic aperture radar, the kind used to find submarines. Their data shows 5 underground levels, depths of 60 to 80 meters, a central hall 40 meters wide and 100 meters long, a moat-like feature shaped like a shin ring, and then the anomaly, a 40-meter metallic object, freestanding, not stone, not bedrock, not natural. Nicknamed Dippy. Mainstream archaeologists call this impossible, but the data is there.
You're basically saying archaeology is a PR department with pottery shards?
I mean, sometimes it feels like it, yeah.
Well, then somebody needs to fire their marketing team.
I'm on board with that.
Now this is where the fight breaks out. Mainstream Egyptologists Leonard, Ikram, Barta say the labyrinth was a big administrative center. Nothing more, nothing exotic, nothing underground. Alternative researchers Hancock, Schock, Collins, Forster, Corsetti say the data fits a much older, more advanced structure. And the two sides don't just disagree, they hate each other.
So, I hope you know that every time you say restricted area, my stomach drops. It's never for a good reason.
Well, because usually it means someone found something they can't explain.
Or something they don't want us to explain.
After the Mataha team publishes their findings in 2008, something strange happens. Zahi Hawass, head of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, steps in and issues a gag order. All communication about the labyrinth is shut down. No more data, no more discussions, no more excavation permits. The official reason: Egyptian national security for a 4,000-year-old ruin.
If the ground penetrating scans are real, then somebody already knows what's down there. They're just not telling us.
That's the part that keeps me up at night.
Same. And I don't even like caves.
In 2019, archaeologist Dr. Jeffrey Tassi, respected, connected, credentialed, travels to Cairo to help secure excavation permits for Hawara. He never makes it home. He dies suddenly in a taxi. Official calls, medical emergency. But the timing, he died while actively challenging the permit embargo. Alternative researchers still whisper about it.
You know, you're describing the same cycle we see everywhere. Discovery, excitement, institutional panic, then silence.
I mean, it's predictable at this point, yeah.
Which is the most depressing part.
Even if the politics don't bury the labyrinth, the water will. The water table at Hawara is now 5 meters below the surface. The entire complex is flooded. Salt water is dissolving the stone from inside out. The labyrinth is literally melting, and no one is allowed to save it.
You always do this. You get close to something big, then you look like you're carrying the weight of it alone.
But I'm not alone. You're right here in it with me.
Good, because I'm not letting you disappear into a labyrinth either.
In 2018, UNESCO and UK universities launched the Labyrinth project, a digital preservation effort, three-dimensional laser scanning, thermal mapping, a virtual Hawara interface. They're preserving it digitally because they can't touch it physically. And that alone is the quiet confession. The labyrinth exists, not as myth, not as legend, but as a structure, massive, intact, and politically radioactive.
If Hawara really is what you think it is, then maybe the real labyrinth isn't underground. Maybe it's the system built to keep us out.
Then we might both.
Deal.
So here we are, 1,000 years of eyewitness accounts, a century of academic certainty, a decade of geophysical contradiction, and a modern political machine that treats a flooded ruin like a state secret. But before we close this chapter, there's something we haven't really talked about yet, something that sits beneath all of this, deeper than the chambers, deeper than the politics, and deeper than the water. Because Hawara isn't just a mystery, it's a pattern that shows up every time humanity gets close to rewriting its own story. Look at the timeline. In 2008, the Mataha Expedition publishes their findings and immediately gets silenced. In 2015, a private SAR team detects 5 underground levels and shares the data in a closed-door meeting. In 2018, UNESCO quietly funds a digital reconstruction without ever acknowledging what they're reconstructing. In 2019, the one archaeologist with the political connections to push for excavation dies in Cairo. And today, this site is drowning. Not from neglect, but from a water system built in the 1820s that nobody's ever corrected. And now here's the part that should make every listener sit up. The Egyptian government has already admitted the labyrinth exists. Not in a press release, not in a documentary, but in the paperwork for the Labyrinth project, the conservation grant that explicitly describes flooded chambers, subsurface architectural features, and an urgent hydrological stabilization. They know it's there. They've always known. And yet, no excavation. No pumps, no rescue mission. Just digital preservation. The archaeological equivalent of a memorial service. But there's more. The groundwater at Hawara isn't rising naturally. It's rising because of modern irrigation canals that cut directly across the site. Canals that could be rerouted, repaired, or regulated, but they aren't. And the salt water that's dissolving the labyrinth from the inside out, that's not an accident either. That's a predictable result of agricultural runoff, unmanaged drainage, and decades of ignored hydrological warnings, including the warnings written by Dr. Jeffrey Tassi himself. Warnings that were never acted on. Warnings that now read like prophecy. And now here's the final twist, the one that ties this entire story together. The labyrinth is not the only site in Egypt showing deep, unexplained anomalies. The same SAR interferometry used at Hawara has detected 80-meter cube structures under Giza, 2,100-foot shafts beneath the plateau, and a possible second sphinx, a network of voids that stretch for miles. Every time new data emerges, the response is the same. Silence, denial, permits revoked, teams removed, narratives protected. Because if Hawara is real, if the labyrinth is intact, then the entire timeline of Egyptian history shifts, not by centuries, but by millennia. And that's the part that nobody wants to talk about. Not the archaeologists, not the ministries, not the institutions that have built their reputations on a version of history that can't survive a 40-meter metallic anomaly sitting 70 meters underground. But here's the truth, the part that matters more than the politics, more than the arguments, more than the academic turf wars. The labyrinth is disappearing, right now, in real time, dissolving into brine and mud. And if we lose it, we lose one of the greatest architectural achievements ever built. We lose the chance to answer questions humanity has been asking for 2,000 years. We lose the opportunity to understand who we were and who we might have been. But more than anything, We lose the proof that our ancestors were capable of things we still don't understand. And that's why this story mattered. Not because of the metallic anomaly, not because of the politics, not because of the secrecy, but because somewhere beneath that stone roof, beneath the water, beneath the sand, and beneath the silence, sits a structure that could change everything we think we know about ourselves. And it's slipping away. Maybe one day the pumps will turn on. Maybe one day the permits will be granted. Maybe one day the world will finally see what Herodotus saw, what Strabo walked across, what the ancients built with a precision we can't explain. But until that day comes, we keep asking questions. We keep digging, even if only with words. We keep shining light into places where history has been buried, drowned, or quietly erased. Because the truth doesn't disappear just because someone covers it with sand. And the past doesn't stay silent forever. Some structures are too big to hide. Some stories are too important to lose. And some mysteries refuse to stay buried. This is Hawara. This is the Labyrinth. And this is only the beginning. As we close this episode, remember this. The world is full of stories that were never meant to stay buried. Every ruin, every rumor, and every forbidden fragment is a reminder that curiosity is a rebellion all its own. So stay sharp, stay hungry, and keep pulling at the threads they told you to ignore. Until next time, this is Stardust the Footnotes, where the forgotten refuses to stay silent.